Pahlavi text translated by Eda B. West, Part 3. Sikand Gumanik Vigar. Clarendon, Oxford University Press, 1885. Chapter 5. Another subject among the asserters of the non-existence of a sacred being is about the existence of the sacred being and his competitor. The knowledge operable by wisdom and the statements of the limits of evidence about the existence of the sacred being and his competitor. This is a summary. One knows it should be enjoined that the supreme first knowledge, most suitable for the well-discerning, is comprehending the sacred being. He of whom this knowledge is not the leader of knowledge is unaided by other knowledge. Comprehending the sacred being is possible through undecayed understanding, fervent intellect, and decisive wisdom, since comprehending the sacred being is not, thus far, more than that one knows that the sacred being exists. Because whoever is acquainted with the existence of a certain thing and is unaware of its nature is thinking thus, that that thing is good or bad, erudite or ignorant, antidote or poison, cold and frozen, or hot and scorching, dry and withering, or damp. And, when unaware of its nature, his only knowledge of it is then useless. For it is possible to cause the commendation and condemnation of any person or thing, not through its existence, but through its nature. Therefore, one knows this should be also enjoined, that the knowledge of anything is acquired in three modes: by knowing what is inevitable, or by knowing what is analogous, or by what is possible and fit to exist. Inevitable knowledge is such as once one is one, and twice two are four. For within the bounds of the really inevitable, it is not possible to say that there was or will be a time or a place where twice two are said to be five or three. Knowledge by analogy is that which announces from anything manifest something which is not manifest, and brings out of anything visible something invisible, in the likeness of a hand put up for the household service of the perception of wisdom, through complete similarity, resemblance, or partial resemblance. Complete similarity is such as that of a man of Pars to a man of another district. Resemblance is such as that of cheese to the white of an egg, and partial resemblance is such as that of cheese to chalk. Since this is about the limit of partial resemblance, because cheese is like unto chalk only in whiteness, but as to the white of an egg in whiteness, and also as food. And there is also that which is called more resembling than resemblance, and more partially resembling than partial resemblance. That which is more than complete similarity is not speaking about, because completion does not become more complete. By this mode it is set forth a second time at more length, to demonstrate an invisible from a visible thing is such as from a thing made and maintained, which is not domestically serving the maker and maintainer, and from a thing written, whose writer is not declared, are manifest a maker of that which is made, a maintainer of that which is maintained, and a writer of that which is written, who are inevitable, because that which is not manifest and is invisible is demonstrated by the thing which is manifest and visible. Information of that which is within the possible and fit to exist is credible, such as what on states thus: I saw a man by whom a lion, or lion by whom a man was slain outright. And this being that which is within the limits of the possible and fit to exist may be a lie. But when a man announces that intelligence, who is renowned for truth and tested in judgment, it is within the limits of truth and reality. If a man announces it, who is disgraced by falsehood and tested in misjudgment, it is within the limits of falsehood and unreality. outside of these and within the limits of the inevitable is by knowing what has not occurred and is not possible, such as what one states thus: it is possible to bring the world in secrecy into the inside of an egg, or it is possible for an elephant to pass into an eye of a needle, in such a manner as though one of them really becomes no greater and no less, or its substance is something which is not a rudiment, a struggle which should not be limited, an existing thing which is not temporary and localized, or is localized and not limited, the working of a vain miracle, and other things of this description of speaking and imagining are faulty and false and not possible. Then the knowledge of the existence of him who is the exalted sacred being, apart from tangibility of nature and other evidence, is through the inevitable and analogy, as much visible before the sight of wisdom as from the prosperity, formation, and organization which are, according to different statements of many kinds, formation of the things of the world and mankind, whose particles and the appliances which are owing thereto are such as the elements of the body and life, from which they are prepared and formed, which are fire, water, air, and earth, that are each separately a stimulus so qualified and ennobled for their own operations. That the operation of fire through its own quality, ki hari, and nobility, vaspu harakani, is such that the operations of water, air, and earth are not to stimulate unrestricted a tongue by it. Thus also the operation of water through its own quality is such that the operations of air, fire, and earth are not unrestricted by it. So also of air the operations of fire, water, and earth are not unrestricted by it. So also of earth the operations of these others are to stimulate, not unrestricted by it, but each separately is for its own operation, just as they are ennobled and qualified by him who is sagaciously and methodically a qualifier, a constructor, and an ennobler, and the organization is constructed, prepared, qualified, and ennobled as is suitable for those operations. So also as to mankind and the other creatures who are the germinating of these elements, whose organization is of bone, fat, sinew, veins, and skin, each separately without sympathy, one for the other, is visible altogether. Thus, too, are the nobility and qualification of the internal organs, such as the liver, heart, lungs, kidneys, gallbladder, and other appliances, for every one of which a function of its own is manifest. They are qualified and ennobled for their defense by those functions which are their own. So also is the qualification of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, mouth, teeth, hand, foot, and other external appliances, whose own functions are each separate. And it is visibly manifest therein, inasmuch as when one of these organs is disabled, any one of the rest is not suitable for the work of that other one, for which it is not qualified. And when only the construction of one of the organs of the body is examined into, that is, how it is wonderfully sagaciously constructed, such as the eye, which is of many natures, of different names and different purposes, as the eyelash, the eyelid, the white, the eyeball, kayak, the iris, sayak, and the pupil, tadak, in such way that the white is fat, the iris is water, which has so stood in the prison of fat that the turning of the eye from side to side occurs through it, and the pupil itself, the sight, is like a view into the water. The iris stands in the prison of white, like the standing of water in a prison of fat, and the pupil is within the iris, like the view of a thing within clear water, or the form of a column in a shining mirror. And the arrangement of the white in the orbit is for the reason that the dust whirling from the atmosphere, when it arrives at the eye, shall not be concealed in it, but shall turn to the lid, gum, of the eye, and shall not injure the sight of the eye, just as the construction of the tube, rog, of the ear is undilated, fa, hull, for the reason that whirls of dust and winged noxious creatures shall not rightly enter therein, and the moisture of oneself, the secretion of the ear, and the venom of noxious creatures are manifestly as useful, when the appliances of life and soul are observed, such as the smell, hearing, sight, taste, and touch, which are causing the intelligence of living beings, as also the wisdom of every pontiff, rod, which is pronounced decisive, the knowledge of which is acquiring, the intellect, which is a seeker and transmitter, the understanding, which is a treasurer and a defender, the consciousness, which is itself the sight of the soul, the guardian spirit, Farabash, which is itself the nature that is a maintainer of the body, the spiritual life, Ahu, which is pure, and the other spiritual existences that are maintaining the body, which are each separately qualified in that manner for their operation and duty. They are perfect in their own operation as to the duty such as they are ennobled and qualified for. As to that for which they are not qualified, they are not suitable. The two arguments, which are each separate in the Dean Card manuscript, as the supremely learned one has explained them out of his knowledge of the religion, are here set forth at length. He whose wish is to fully understand the wonderfulness of the Mazdablician religion and the statements of the primitive faith, examines into it a manuscript of that character, and shall understand more fully the wonderfulness and truth of the religion. No, verse 95. Truth of the religion. Nearly all the Pahlavi manuscripts of this work terminate here. And, okay, there was not spoken about in verse 24, which I think I use some other similar word of that group anyways. And Atur Throbog, see chapter 4, 107. So the supremely learned one in verse 92. In verse 89, in that manner, by the assistance of the senses mentioned in verse 81. And as a means of defense, 79 mentions the venom of the noxious creatures as useful. In verse 69, the iris in water, which has so stood in the prison, reading log instead of rog, a vein, which latter is adopted by Neryo Song both here and in verse 71. And the white spat in the verse before, assuming that pause, peg, as well as pe in verse 69, and pa 71 stand for the Pahlavi peak, the Persian p, that, and might also be connected with the Persian ka, a veil, as Neryo Song seems to have understood it here, but that suits the whole context better. And verse 65, it is wonderfully sagaciously constructed. So in Sanskrit, the Pahlavi text may be translated, how wonderful it is, it's sagaciously constructed. And such as the liver, heart, assuming that the Zan Dawur is a misreading of the Pahlavi deal. And verse 50, not to stimulate, unrestricted, a tongue. See chapter 3:30, and that word for nobility, vas, pu, arakani, and own quality, ri. And verse 47, from which, reading Moon Azaz for the Bazan Ka Vas, as from the prosperity, so in Sanskrit, but Bahar Homandi also means divisibility. 46, then, reading Adinas, then of him for Bazan Atna, as in chapter 481, having explained the modes of arguing in verse 12 to 45, the author now returns to the argument itself. Okay. The false and not possible. So verse 12 starts with inevitable knowledge. And the thing about the eye of the needle, well, actually the thing was they had gates that you had to take off your load to go through. So we couldn't ride a mounted animal through the gates. So it's not quite what it is. But maybe you couldn't actually ride an elephant through there. You could only ride a horse. But you'd have to, take the bags and stuff off the horse and carry the things through. As a finger post, okay, verse 16, in the likeness of the hand put up. Verse 10, the knowledge of, the Sanskrit inserts the nature of, and in assuming that the Bazan Agunast, the Sanskrit Anavila, stands for the Pahlavi Agundid, but it may stand for the Pahlavi Agungid, unsilenced. And verse 5, undecayed.